The Hound of the Baskervilles is my favorite Sherlock Holmes book and my favorite episode of the BBC television series Sherlock. But what is the inspiration for this story? Is there any truth to the legend? Is there really a Hound of the Baskervilles? Let's do some detective work. The first place we will search for clues is Ardsley Castle in Herefordshire, England. For 600 years, Ardsley Castle was the home of the Baskerville family. The Bishop of Hereford was imprisoned there in 1263 during the Barons' Revolt. The castle may have been plundered by the Welsh during the Revolt of 1403. The Baskervilles continued to live there until the 1680s, when the estate was sold to William Barnsley, a cloth merchant from London. He demolished the castle and built the present house on the site. The Baskerville family had a lot of land, and they came to England with William the Conqueror. Thomas Minors Baskerville succeeded to the Cliro Court property through his mother, Meliora Powell, and in 1839 he built Baskerville Hall. So now that we know Baskerville Hall is a real place, and we know a little bit about the Baskerville family, where does the Hound come into play? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a family friend who often came to stay at Baskerville Hall. During his many visits, he learned of the local legend of the Hounds of the Baskervilles. It is reported that on nearby Hirsch Ridge, he translated this into probably the most famous case for Sherlock Holmes. However, at the request of his friends, he set the book in Devon to ward off tourists. In his memoirs, Doyle recorded that one afternoon during this trip, he had a long conversation with a young journalist who mentioned the legend of a ferocious black dog that haunted the countryside. We do not know whether this beast was the local Black Shuck, or perhaps a version of the legend from the Beast of Dartmoor. The fact that Doyle arranged to go on a walking tour of Dartmoor a month later would seem to indicate it was the latter. So who or what is the legend behind Doyle's story? There are actually two possibilities, and we will look at both of them here. Let's start with a man by the name of Richard Cabell. According to legend, a man named Richard Cabell lived in West Buckflessley in the late 17th century. A squire by trade, he was by all accounts an absolutely hated man known for his violent tendencies. Supposedly, his family had supported the wrong side during the English Civil War, and Richard ended up marrying the daughter of the man who had imposed fines on the family and sent them into financial ruin. The marriage meant that he got his estate back, but the locals were convinced that he had sold his soul to the devil, apparently finding this a much more likely explanation for the return of his fortunes than the idea that he just wanted to set things straight. It was said that his wife eventually found herself the target of his rage, although records show that she actually outlived him by many years. Cabell was said to have chased her out onto the moors in a jealous rage one night, killing her. In retaliation, her faithful hound ripped out his throat. Cabell was laid to rest in the local church, but the villagers were afraid that he would rise from the grave and return to torment them. Instead of a simple grave, he was buried in a tomb lined with iron bars and sealed with a massive slab, all designed to keep him inside. Almost immediately, villagers claimed to hear hounds howling in the night, pacing outside of his grave. Naturally, they were the hounds of hell, sent by the devil to collect a soul that he had been promised. Other stories claim that the tomb is regularly visited by demons, hoping to succeed where the hounds have failed. It is said that if you run around the grave 7 times and then reach through the iron bars of the tomb, Cabell will start chewing on your fingers, which is pretty creepy in itself, to be honest. Not long after he was buried there, the cemetery became a popular haunt for body snatchers. The church attached to it has been struck by lightning, partially destroyed by fire more than once, and decimated by German bombs during World War II. Rumor has it that it's also a favorite haunt for Satanists, but now the church stands empty and gutted after the latest fire. That's one very strange and disturbing inspiration for the story, but let's look at the other one. Let's head to Herges Court in Herefordshire. Sir Thomas Vaughan of Herges was a Herefordshire landowner who fought for the Yorkists in the War of the Roses. They say he was an extremely evil man, but there's actually little evidence of this, and the nickname Black Vaughan may be a comment on his dark hair more than his ruthlessness. According to a local legend, after his headless body was brought back and buried in St. Mary's Church at Kingston on the border between Hertfordshire and Wales, Black Vaughan proved to be a restless spirit who wreaked havoc amongst the townsfolk. Legend has him appearing in many forms, such as a fly which tormented horses, causing them to bolt, a large black dog, a black bull that entered the church and frightened the congregation. Sir Thomas, in one form or another, roamed the nearby countryside, terrifying women by leaping onto their coaches as they rode home. He is said to have left physical impressions in the ground after his visitations in the form of bare patches in the grass. Eventually, the townsfolk, at their wits' end, to solve this little problem, they called 12 clergymen to perform an exorcism and put an end to his restless spirit. The Vaughan's legacy continues with the story of the Black Dog of Herges Court, a companion to Sir Thomas Vaughan, which is believed to have had its own room at the top of the house. The dog is said to have haunted generations of the Vaughan family ever since, appearing before them to signify imminent death. It is widely thought that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle based his Sherlock Holmes story, The Hound of the Baskervilles, on the tale of the Herges Black Dog. Since Arthur is known to have stayed at Herges Court and presumably heard of the nearby Baskerville family from Eardsley, then maybe the story is based on fact. Now let's look at a few sightings of the Hound of Herges Court. In 1927, there was a sighting of the Hound. A neighbor told my uncle that on a moonlight night he was crossing the Arrow by the bridge below the court and distinctly saw a black hound that was larger than any dog he had ever seen walk in front of him, but beyond the bridge the beast was not. Is there really a Hound of the Baskervilles? There are many legends in the UK of large hellhound-like dogs, and it is very possible that these two legends and haunts inspired Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to write The Hound of the Baskervilles. So what do you think? Are there really giant hounds that haunt these two places? This case has proven to be less than elementary, my dear viewers.